Rizwan had always liked the quiet rhythm of his life on Kepler Station, a sprawling human-alien colony tucked at the edge of the Orion Belt. From his small apartment, he could see the stars twinkling beyond the station's thick glass walls, and he enjoyed the gentle hum of machinery, mixed with alien chatter drifting through the corridors. Life here was orderly, predictable, and pleasantly strange until Xylox moved in next door. Xylox was nothing like the other aliens Rizwan had met in the colony. Its body shimmered in shifting colors almost like liquid metal, and it moved with an elegance that humans could hardly understand. Some of the other residents said Xylox looked like a living hologram, always changing its form in subtle ways. But what really drew Rizwan's attention were the sounds Xylox made: soft hums, rhythmic pulses, and occasional high-pitched chirps that seemed to resonate in his bones. At first, Rizwan thought it was just the normal behavior of Xylox's species. After all, he had spent years studying different alien customs for the colony's cultural committee. But then came the first warning signs. One evening, as he sipped lukewarm coffee and watched the twin suns set behind the docking bays, he noticed Xylox standing unusually still in its habitat. Its skin glowed brighter than ever before, sending streaks of golden light crawling across the walls. Rizwan frowned. He had never seen it react like this. The next day, the hums grew louder. The pulses became more frequent, vibrating through the walls and floors. Rizwan tried to ignore it at first. He had deadlines to meet, reports to file, and maintenance checks to conduct. Yet, no matter what he did, Xylox's signals intruded into every corner of his consciousness. Even in the cafeteria, he could feel the vibrations under his feet. Curiosity won over frustration. Rizwan, notebook in hand, approached Xylox's habitat one morning, careful to follow the colony's protocols for interacting with alien species. "Good morning, Xylox," he said in the universal language. The alien's head turned slightly, a wave of deep blue sweeping across its form. Rizwan smiled awkwardly. He was learning fast that Xylox's expressions were subtle, a flicker of color or a shift in shape. "You're active today," he said, noting the rapid glow pulsing along its limbs. Xylox responded with a series of chirps, each tone carrying a different vibration. Rizwan recorded everything, translating as best he could. The patterns were intricate, almost musical. He had never seen any other alien communicate like this. By the evening, Xylox's behavior escalated. It began floating slightly above the ground, spinning in smooth circles as if caught in a dance only it could hear. The colors on its body became more vivid, brighter than anything Rizwan had seen even in the laboratory's artificial light experiments. The vibrations were strong enough to rattle the plates in his kitchen. Rizwan's curiosity turned into mild concern. He remembered reading reports about Xylox's species in the colony archives. The literature described occasional mating cycles that were marked by energy surges, light displays, and unique sounds. But these were rare events, happening once every few decades. Rizwan hadn't expected he would witness one. The next morning, he spoke to Dr. Lemaire, the colony's xenobiologist. "I think Xylox is entering some kind of ritual," he said, showing her the recordings on his tablet. "The energy levels, the colors. It's not just communication. It's something else." Dr. Lemaire's eyes widened behind her glasses. "If that's true, it's the first recorded instance of a Xylox ritual on this station," she said. "We must monitor it carefully. These cycles can be intense, even dangerous if humans or other species get too close." Rizwan nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and responsibility. He decided he would stay close, not to interfere but to observe and understand. He set up sensors around Xylox's habitat, recording the light patterns, vibrations, and sounds. Each pulse, each shimmer seemed to tell a story, one that Rizwan was determined to decode. Days passed, and Xylox's behavior grew more complex. It started arranging objects in its habitat, crystals, metallic spheres, and floating orbs, into patterns that looked like a miniature city. Rizwan realized the arrangement was not random. It followed a geometric logic that reminded him of fractals. He was fascinated. No human could have thought of something so intricate without years of training, yet Xylox created it naturally, guided by instinct and culture. Rizwan also noticed changes in Xylox's interactions with other aliens. Where before Xylox had avoided most species, it now moved closer to others, its vibrations sending gentle signals across the colony's communication channels. Some aliens responded with curiosity, while others retreated in confusion. Humans, Rizwan noted with amusement, were the most adaptable. They approached cautiously but stayed to watch. One night, as Rizwan was taking a final reading for the day, he heard a strange sound outside his window. It was a soft rhythmic pulse, almost like a heartbeat. Looking over, he saw Xylox glowing intensely, spinning in midair, sending ripples of light across the station. He felt a strange warmth, almost as if the energy was reaching him personally. He realized that Xylox's ritual affected the environment in ways he had not anticipated. The following morning, the colony buzzed with activity. Residents had noticed the spectacle, and speculation ran rampant. Some thought it was a warning. Others believed it was a performance. Rizwan, however, had a different perspective. He understood that this was a natural, cultural event for Xylox, an expression of life, connection, and perhaps something humans could barely comprehend. Determined to help, Rizwan contacted the station's council. "We need to ensure Xylox can complete its ritual safely," he said. "This is not a threat. It's an opportunity to learn, to witness something extraordinary." The council hesitated but eventually agreed, allowing Rizwan to implement safety measures around the habitat. Xylox seemed to respond to the human efforts. Its colors softened when humans approached, and the vibrations became steadier, almost rhythmic. Rizwan noticed subtle patterns. Xylox's signals were changing in ways that suggested it recognized his presence, and perhaps even understood his intentions. The idea amazed him. Humans had always prided themselves on empathy and ingenuity, but here was a chance to see it work across species. Over the next few days, Rizwan's routine became intertwined with Xylox's ritual. He spent hours observing, recording, and interpreting, often forgetting to eat or sleep properly. Yet he felt alive in a way he hadn't before. Each pulse, each shimmer told him something new about alien life, and about what humans could achieve when they approached the unknown with patience and respect. The climax of Part 1 came unexpectedly. Xylox's energy output spiked dramatically, flooding the room with vibrant light. Rizwan's sensors went wild, recording levels beyond anything previously documented. The vibrations were strong, yet he felt no fear, only awe. Xylox floated in the center of the room, spinning gracefully, colors merging and separating like liquid rainbows. The scene was mesmerizing, almost hypnotic. Rizwan realized something profound. Humans had a unique ability to observe, interpret, and adapt. While Xylox was extraordinary in its own way, it was Rizwan's curiosity, empathy, and courage that allowed him to witness the ritual safely and understand it. The combination of human ingenuity and alien wonder created a moment neither species could have achieved alone. As he stood there, notebook in hand, Rizwan smiled. He knew this was only the beginning. The ritual would continue and the outcomes were uncertain, but he felt ready. He would navigate the complexities, decode the signals, and perhaps uncover a deeper connection between humans and aliens than anyone had ever imagined. For the first time since Xylox moved in, Rizwan did not feel like a mere observer. He was part of something larger, a living, breathing, pulsing celebration of life that transcended species. And as the light dimmed for the night, he whispered softly, "Let's see where this goes." The next morning, Rizwan woke earlier than usual, his mind still racing with thoughts of Xylox's incredible display from the night before. The memory of the glowing patterns, the rhythmic pulses, and the way Xylox had seemed almost aware of his presence filled him with both excitement and curiosity. Today he decided he would try to understand more deeply what Xylox was doing, and why the ritual had such a strong effect on the colony's environment. By the time he reached Xylox's habitat, a small crowd of aliens and humans had already gathered. Unlike Rizwan, most of them did not understand what was happening. They watched with cautious awe, whispering theories about the glowing lights and vibrations. Some suggested it was a form of communication. Others were convinced it was a warning or a threat. Rizwan smiled at their reactions. Humans were prone to panic when confronted with the unknown. Yet he had learned long ago that curiosity could turn confusion into discovery. Xylox was already active. Its body shimmered with hues of violet, gold, and deep blue, and it floated gracefully around its habitat. The objects it had arranged into patterns earlier, crystals, metallic spheres, and floating orbs, were moving now, almost as if they had a life of their own. Rizwan quickly activated his sensors, taking careful notes of the sequences, vibrations, and light intensity. Each pattern seemed to follow a rhythm, a pulse that connected Xylox's movements with the objects around it. He approached carefully, keeping a respectful distance. "Good morning, Xylox," he said softly, recording the response. Xylox's form shifted, deep green spreading across its body, a subtle nod that Rizwan interpreted as acknowledgement. The alien's chirps filled the habitat, and Rizwan felt the vibrations ripple through the floor, reaching him in a strange but pleasant way. For hours, Rizwan observed, fascinated by the complexity of the ritual. He noticed that Xylox was not simply moving randomly. Every motion, every glow, and every vibration seemed deliberate. The objects followed invisible lines, forming geometric shapes that reminded him of Earth's fractals and sacred patterns. Rizwan realized that this ritual was more than a mating display. It was a way for Xylox to communicate with the colony, to show its presence and vitality, and perhaps even to invite interaction in a form of shared experience. As he recorded and analyzed, Rizwan's thoughts drifted to human abilities. Humans could invent, adapt, and empathize in ways that were unique. While Xylox's ritual was extraordinary, Rizwan knew it was his ability to observe, interpret, and mediate that would ensure safety and understanding. Without him, the other residents might panic, or the ritual could be interrupted, causing unnecessary stress for Xylox. Later that day, Rizwan decided to speak with Dr. Lemaire again. "Xylox's ritual seems to be reaching a critical point," he said. "The energy output is higher than anything we've recorded. We need to make sure the colony remains safe, but we also need to protect Xylox from interference." Dr. Lemaire nodded thoughtfully. "You're right. These cycles can affect the surrounding systems, power conduits, gravity fields, and even minor communications. We need to isolate its habitat while keeping observation channels open. Your approach seems effective, Rizwan. You are calm, patient, and respectful. That's exactly what's needed." Rizwan felt a surge of pride. Humans had a tendency to overcomplicate problems or react with fear, but in this case, his natural curiosity and adaptability allowed him to act wisely. He set up temporary shields to contain the strongest energy pulses, while leaving windows for observation. He also adjusted his sensors to record more subtle frequencies, hoping to uncover more of Xylox's intentions. By evening, Xylox's ritual intensified. The alien floated higher, spinning in slow, deliberate circles. The crystals and spheres responded to its movements, orbiting around it in mesmerizing patterns. The colors became even more vibrant, merging and separating in waves of light that seemed almost musical. Rizwan watched in awe, realizing that the ritual was not only a personal expression for Xylox, but a cosmic performance that involved the environment, the objects, and even the observers. As the crowd gathered, Rizwan noticed something extraordinary. Other aliens in the colony, who had initially been cautious or fearful, began to participate in subtle ways. One alien extended its tentacles toward Xylox's light patterns, while another mirrored its movements, creating a ripple of interaction that spread across the room. Humans hesitated at first, but gradually some joined, inspired by Rizwan's calm and curiosity. Rizwan smiled quietly. This was what made humans special. The ability to bridge gaps, to understand and adapt, and to inspire others to do the same. While Xylox had created the ritual instinctively, humans could enhance it with empathy, intelligence, and courage. The combination was creating something entirely new, something no single species could achieve alone. As the ritual reached its peak, Xylox's energy pulses interacted directly with Rizwan's sensors. Instead of overwhelming them, the energy seemed to synchronize, creating a pattern of light and vibration that was almost harmonious. Rizwan felt a tingling sensation, not painful but exhilarating. He realized that the ritual had the power to connect beings in unexpected ways, and humans, with their empathy and adaptability, were capable of participating meaningfully. For the first time, Rizwan noticed a pattern in Xylox's behavior that seemed directed toward him. The colors shifted in waves that resembled gestures, and the vibrations pulsed in rhythms that matched his own heartbeat. He hesitated, unsure if he was imagining it, but the sensations were unmistakable. Xylox was responding, not just to the environment, but to him personally. Rizwan stepped closer, careful not to intrude. "I understand you want to share this," he said softly. I'm here to learn. Xylox's form shimmered with bright golden streaks, then settled into a deep blue glow, almost like a nod of agreement. Rizwan realized that the ritual was a form of communication far beyond words. It was a shared experience, a way to connect with other beings, and humans had the unique ability to interpret, empathize, and participate. That night, the colony held a brief meeting to review the events. Some residents were nervous about the intensity of Xylox's ritual, but most were fascinated. They had witnessed something extraordinary. A living alien culture expressing itself in a way that transcended traditional communication. And in the center of it all stood Rizwan, a human calmly observing, interpreting, and helping others understand. Rizwan's role did not go unnoticed. The council praised him for his patience, insight, and courage. He felt proud but also humbled. Humans were not the most powerful species in the colony. They could not outshine Xylox in beauty or energy. Yet their curiosity, empathy, and adaptability allowed them to participate meaningfully in events that were beyond comprehension for most other species. The following days saw a subtle change in the colony. Residents who had been distant from Xylox's habitat began to approach, guided by Rizwan's example. They learned to respect the ritual, to observe without fear, and to appreciate the alien culture. Humans in particular began to see themselves not as outsiders, but as collaborators in a shared experience. Rizwan continued his observations, documenting every pattern, vibration, and color shift. He realized that Xylox's ritual was not just a personal display. It was a lesson in cooperation, understanding, and connection. By engaging with it thoughtfully, humans could demonstrate their unique value, not through strength, but through intelligence, creativity, and empathy. One afternoon, Rizwan noticed a surprising development. Xylox's energy field began interacting with the floating objects in ways he had not anticipated. Crystals and spheres moved independently, forming patterns that suggested experimentation. Xylox seemed to be testing the environment, adjusting sequences to achieve a desired effect. Rizwan understood that this was advanced problem-solving, a type of communication and expression that only a being with immense intelligence could manage. Rizwan's excitement grew. He realized that humans, by observing and responding thoughtfully, could participate in this experiment. He carefully adjusted his sensors to mirror Xylox's patterns, creating subtle feedback loops. To his amazement, Xylox's responses became more dynamic, as if recognizing the human participation. The room filled with synchronized light, vibration, and color, a shared dance between species that was mesmerizing to watch. By the end of Part 2, Rizwan felt a deep sense of accomplishment. He had not only observed a rare alien ritual, but had participated in it in a meaningful way. The colony had learned to approach the unknown with curiosity and respect, and humans had demonstrated their unique strengths. Rizwan understood that the true power of humanity lay in its ability to adapt, to empathize, and to create connections even with species as different as Xylox. That night, as Rizwan returned to his apartment, he looked at the stars with renewed wonder. He knew the ritual was far from over, and that the coming days would bring even more surprises. But he felt ready. Humans had a place here not as observers, but as collaborators in a universe full of mysteries waiting to be understood. And somewhere next door, Xylox glowed softly in the dark, its pulses echoing faintly through the walls, a reminder that the extraordinary often begins with curiosity, patience, and an open mind. Rizwan awoke to the soft hum of Kepler Station. The twin suns outside had not yet risen, but the corridors were already alive with low vibrations and quiet chatter from the colony. Xylox's ritual had continued through the night, and Rizwan could feel it even through the walls of his apartment. The energy pulses, though subtle at this hour, seemed to call him, drawing him toward the alien neighbor's habitat. By the time he reached Xylox's area, the room was bathed in a pale glow. The crystals and spheres that had been part of the ritual for days floated in intricate orbits, following invisible lines only Xylox could see. The alien itself shimmered like liquid starlight spinning slowly, colors blending and separating in waves that seemed almost alive. Rizwan stood at a safe distance, notebook in hand, ready to record every detail. Today, something felt different. The air seemed charged with anticipation. The vibrations were stronger, more organized, and somehow more personal. Rizwan noticed that the objects Xylox had arranged were beginning to form patterns he had never seen before. Geometric shapes that seemed to expand outward, filling the room with light and energy. It was as if the ritual was evolving, growing more complex with each passing moment. He adjusted his sensors and devices to capture the new activity. Every pulse, every shimmer was recorded. Yet Rizwan knew that numbers and graphs could never fully capture the beauty of what was unfolding. There was a rhythm here, a language beyond words, a connection that transcended species. Humans could read patterns, empathize, and respond. It was this unique ability that allowed Rizwan to follow Xylox's ritual in a meaningful way. As the morning light slowly crept into the habitat, Xylox's energy field suddenly spiked. The crystals and spheres reacted, moving faster, forming spirals and waves of light that cascaded through the room. Rizwan felt the vibrations resonate through his body in a way that was almost musical. He realized that this was not just a ritual, it was an interaction, a shared experience between species. Humans, with their ability to observe, adapt, and respond creatively, were now part of Xylox's expression. The colony had begun to notice the changes. Small groups of humans and aliens gathered outside the habitat, whispering theories, recording videos, and cautiously observing. Some of the younger aliens, curious by nature, started moving closer, mimicking the pulses of light with their own minor energy displays. Rizwan smiled quietly. This was the moment humans were made for, turning chaos into understanding, bridging gaps between worlds, and discovering connections that no single species could achieve alone. Rizwan carefully stepped closer to Xylox, keeping his movement slow and deliberate. "I think I understand what you are doing," he said softly. "I want to help if I can." Xylox responded with a series of subtle glows and rhythmic pulses. Rizwan felt the vibrations match his own heartbeat, and a strange warmth spread through him. It was not fear or danger. It was recognition, an acknowledgement that the human was part of the ritual, not just a bystander. Hours passed in a blur of colors, light, and sound. Xylox's ritual reached new heights, forming patterns that spiraled and expanded into shapes Rizwan could hardly describe. The floating objects seemed almost alive, reacting not only to Xylox's energy but also to the subtle movements and pulses that Rizwan generated. It was as if the alien had discovered a way to communicate directly with him, using the human presence as part of the ritual itself. At one point, Xylox emitted a pulse that sent a wave of energy rippling through the room. Rizwan braced himself, expecting the worst, but instead felt an overwhelming sense of clarity. The patterns of light seemed to speak to him, showing sequences of movement, rhythm, and connection. He realized that Xylox's ritual was a form of teaching, a demonstration of the bonds that could exist between beings who were willing to observe and respond thoughtfully. Rizwan's human creativity began to play a role. He adjusted the positions of some sensors, changing the feedback patterns ever so slightly. The crystals and spheres responded immediately, forming new shapes and sequences. Xylox's colors shifted rapidly, bright streaks of gold and violet moving across its body almost like laughter. Rizwan laughed softly, amazed at the feedback loop that had formed between them. It was a dance of intellect and instinct, a collaboration no one had predicted. Outside, the colony watched in stunned silence. Even those who had been skeptical or fearful were now captivated. The room was alive with energy, and the spectacle had a rhythm and order that made sense even to outsiders. Rizwan noticed that some aliens were beginning to mimic the patterns, subtly participating without knowing the full purpose. It was a lesson in understanding and cooperation, a demonstration that humans could not only witness the extraordinary but also enhance it. By mid-afternoon, Xylox's energy pulses grew even stronger. The floating objects began to orbit faster, forming tunnels and spirals of light that filled the entire habitat. Rizwan felt the vibrations in his chest and limbs as if the alien energy had synced with his own biology. For the first time, he realized the full impact of the ritual. Xylox's species had evolved a form of communication and expression that interacted with the environment, the observers, and even other species in ways that humans were uniquely able to interpret and enhance. Rizwan's mind raced with possibilities. Humans could participate in rituals like this, not by copying alien behavior, but by responding with empathy, creativity, and understanding. It was an idea that thrilled him. Humans had a place in the cosmos not because of brute strength or power, but because of their ability to observe, interpret, and interact thoughtfully. As evening approached, Xylox's ritual reached its most spectacular phase. The energy pulses intensified, and the floating objects created spiraling columns of light that intertwined with Xylox's glowing form. Rizwan felt an overwhelming sense of awe. The patterns were mesmerizing, almost hypnotic, yet they carried intelligence, intent, and purpose. It was a form of communication far beyond words, and humans had the ability to understand it, not fully, perhaps, but meaningfully enough to participate. Suddenly, the energy pulses shifted directly toward Rizwan. At first, he felt a moment of fear, expecting to be overwhelmed. But instead, the vibrations synced with his own pulse, forming a pattern that seemed to recognize him personally. His sensors recorded the event, but Rizwan knew that no technology could capture the wonder of the moment. He was witnessing something extraordinary, an alien species acknowledging a human's presence, participation, and understanding. Xylox's colors swirled faster, bright streaks of orange and green flashing across its body. The floating objects began orbiting Rizwan in subtle patterns, as if including him in the performance. Rizwan laughed softly, a mix of disbelief and joy. The ritual had transformed from a display of alien instinct into a shared experience between species. Humans, through observation, empathy, and ingenuity, had become part of something far greater than themselves. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time seemed meaningless in the glow of the ritual. Rizwan realized that Xylox was teaching a lesson. Connection, understanding, and cooperation could transcend biology, culture, and even species. The humans who had watched from the edges of the habitat felt it too, a subtle shift in perception. They no longer saw the ritual as strange or threatening, but as a demonstration of what could be achieved when beings approached the unknown with curiosity and respect. Finally, Xylox's energy began to settle. The colors softened, the floating objects slowed their movement, and the vibrations calmed. Rizwan felt a sense of completeness, as if the ritual had reached its natural conclusion. He exhaled deeply, amazed at what he had witnessed and even more amazed that humans had played a part in it. The colony erupted in quiet applause. Residents, both human and alien, were filled with awe and newfound respect. Rizwan smiled, feeling proud but also humbled. Humans had not created the spectacle, nor could they match Xylox's natural beauty and intelligence. Yet through their curiosity, empathy, and ability to adapt, they had become part of it. They had contributed meaningfully to an experience that no other species could have achieved alone. Dr. Lemaire approached Rizwan later that evening. "You were brilliant today," she said, eyes wide with admiration. "Humans have always been adaptable, but this was something else. You showed patience, understanding, and creativity. You didn't just observe, you participated, and the ritual responded." Rizwan nodded, feeling a warm satisfaction. He realized that this was what made humans unique. The ability to bridge gaps, to understand the unknown, and to create connections that transcended differences. Xylox's ritual had been a test, a display and a lesson all at once, and humans had passed. As he returned to his apartment that night, Rizwan looked at the stars with renewed wonder. The ritual was not over. Xylox would continue and the colony would witness new phases of energy, light, and connection, but he felt ready. Humans had a role to play, not as mere observers, but as collaborators in a universe full of mysteries waiting to be understood. Somewhere next door, Xylox glowed softly, its pulses echoing faintly through the walls, a reminder that life was full of surprises, and that the extraordinary often began with curiosity, patience, and a willingness to engage. Rizwan smiled, knowing that tomorrow would bring even more wonders. The morning sun cast a pale golden light across Kepler Station, but Rizwan barely noticed it. Sleep had eluded him, not from worry but from excitement. Xylox's ritual had reached heights he could hardly comprehend yesterday, and he knew the final phase would be even more extraordinary. Today, he would witness the results, the moment when Xylox's mating cycle would reach its climax, and the colony would see the full extent of the alien ritual. By the time he arrived at Xylox's habitat, a large crowd had gathered. Humans and aliens alike lined the perimeter, their faces a mixture of awe, curiosity, and cautious anticipation. Unlike yesterday, today felt different. There was a palpable tension in the air, not from fear but from expectation. Every resident seemed to sense that something remarkable was about to happen. Xylox floated in the center of the habitat, glowing softly at first, colors rippling gently across its form. The crystals and spheres arranged in geometric patterns began to move again, orbiting, spinning, and colliding lightly in perfect harmony. Rizwan could feel the vibrations beneath his feet and in his chest. They were stronger than ever, but instead of being alarming, they felt inviting, as if the energy itself was welcoming him to participate in the final stage of the ritual. Rizwan took a deep breath. "This is it," he whispered to himself. He activated all his sensors, prepared to record every movement, pulse, and color shift. But more than documentation, he wanted to observe, to truly understand, and to participate in whatever way he could. The ritual began in earnest. Xylox emitted a series of high-pitched chirps, followed by deep resonant vibrations that shook the floating objects in synchronized patterns. Light shot outward in spirals, colliding and merging in brilliant displays across the room. The crowd gasped. Even the most skeptical observers were mesmerized, unable to look away. The air was alive with energy, and Rizwan felt a tingling sensation throughout his body. It was as if the alien ritual had reached out and touched him directly. Xylox's colors shifted rapidly, moving through shades of violet, gold, green, and crimson. The patterns formed by the floating objects became more intricate, resembling shapes Rizwan had never seen in mathematics or nature. It was beautiful and confusing at the same time, a language of energy, light, and movement that communicated something profound without words. Rizwan noticed that the energy pulses seemed to synchronize with the observers in the room. The vibrations responded not only to Xylox's movements, but also to the reactions of humans and aliens alike. The colony itself became part of the ritual. Walls shimmered with reflected light, floors vibrated with rhythmic pulses, and even the air seemed to hum with energy. Rizwan realized the ritual was no longer just a personal expression. It was a celebration of life, connection, and understanding across species. Encouraged by this realization, Rizwan moved closer. Carefully, he mirrored some of Xylox's gestures, adjusting his own pulse and movements to align with the energy. The floating objects reacted instantly, forming new spirals and patterns around him. Xylox's form shimmered in response, colors brightening in waves that seemed almost like laughter. For the first time, Rizwan understood fully. Humans could not match Xylox in energy or beauty, but they could contribute uniquely by observing, adapting, and responding. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the interaction grew. Other humans and aliens began to join subtly, mirroring movements or adding small gestures. The energy in the room intensified, forming a complex tapestry of light and motion. It was no longer just Xylox's ritual. It had become a shared experience, a living artwork co-created by multiple species. Rizwan felt a surge of pride. Humans had not dominated, but they had participated meaningfully, showing ingenuity, empathy, and courage. Suddenly, Xylox's energy field surged dramatically. The floating objects began spinning faster, creating twisting columns of light that intertwined across the room. The vibrations reached a peak that Rizwan had never felt before, syncing perfectly with his own heartbeat. He realized this was the climax, the moment when the ritual would reveal its true outcome. He held his breath, ready to witness whatever extraordinary event was about to unfold. Then it happened. The energy from Xylox, combined with the responses of the humans and other aliens, created a spectacular phenomenon. Streams of colored light shot upward, merging into a luminous sphere that hovered in the center of the room. It pulsed rhythmically, sending waves of vibration and color through the colony. The sphere expanded slowly, revealing within it patterns that seemed to tell a story of life, growth, connection, and harmony. Rizwan's jaw dropped. He had never imagined that a ritual could result in something so beautiful, so complex, and so alive. The observers were equally stunned. Some cried quietly, others laughed in disbelief, and all watched in awe. Rizwan realized that this was more than a mating ritual. Xylox had created a moment of pure wonder, a shared experience that transcended species. Humans had helped not by imitating, but by observing, interpreting, and responding thoughtfully. Their curiosity and empathy had amplified the beauty of the ritual, showing that their presence had meaning beyond their physical abilities. Rizwan stepped closer to the sphere, feeling its energy pulse against him. He noticed subtle interactions. The sphere responded to his movements, adjusting the light patterns in a way that seemed playful, intelligent, and intentional. It was as if Xylox and the humans had co-created a living work of art, one that could never exist without collaboration. The realization filled Rizwan with awe. Humans had a unique place in the universe, not because of dominance, strength, or technology, but because of their ability to connect, understand, and enhance life around them. The spectacle continued for hours. Xylox's colors shifted, the floating objects danced, and the luminous sphere rotated slowly, sending waves of beauty across the habitat. The crowd remained silent, mesmerized by the extraordinary display. Rizwan felt his mind expanding, realizing that this was the kind of moment that could inspire generations, showing the value of empathy, curiosity, and collaboration across species. Finally, the sphere began to shrink. The light dimmed, the floating objects returned to their initial positions, and Xylox settled gracefully onto the floor of its habitat. The energy pulses softened, leaving a warm, gentle hum that resonated through the room. Rizwan exhaled deeply, feeling a sense of completion and satisfaction. The ritual had ended, but its impact on the colony and on him would last far longer. Dr. Lemaire approached, her eyes wide with wonder. "Rizwan, that was incredible," she said. "Humans have always adapted, but what you did today, observing, participating, enhancing the ritual, it was extraordinary. You helped create something no one could have imagined." Rizwan smiled quietly, feeling both proud and humbled. Outside the habitat, the colony began to process what they had witnessed. Residents discussed the ritual in small groups, analyzing patterns, energy pulses, and light sequences. Some attempted to replicate simple gestures, hoping to understand the principles behind the spectacle. Humans, in particular, felt a newfound confidence in their abilities. They had contributed meaningfully to something far beyond themselves, showing that curiosity, empathy, and ingenuity were powerful tools in a universe full of unknowns. That night, Rizwan returned to his apartment and looked out at the stars. He thought of Xylox glowing softly in the dark, and the luminous sphere that had filled the habitat earlier. For the first time, he felt that humans truly belonged in this diverse colony, not just as residents or observers, but as participants, collaborators, and co-creators. The experience had taught him something essential, that the most extraordinary achievements often came from understanding and cooperation, rather than force or dominance. Rizwan smiled as he reflected on the past few days. Xylox's ritual had been a lesson in patience, observation, and connection. Humans had contributed not through power or strength, but through their unique ability to interpret, adapt, and respond thoughtfully. It was a victory not of humans over aliens, but of humans with aliens, a celebration of life that transcended species. As he drifted to sleep, Rizwan felt a sense of anticipation for the future. Xylox's ritual might be over for now, but the lessons would remain. Humans had proven their value, and he knew that more mysteries, challenges, and opportunities awaited. He felt ready to face them, confident in the knowledge that curiosity, empathy, and intelligence could create extraordinary outcomes, no matter how alien the situation. Somewhere next door, Xylox glowed softly, a gentle ripple of color pulsing through its body. Rizwan smiled, understanding that this was not just a ritual or a display. It was a beginning. Humans had a place in this universe, not as conquerors, but as collaborators, observers, and partners in the grand dance of life. The colony would never forget the spectacle. The colors, the vibrations, and the luminous sphere had left an indelible mark, a reminder that the extraordinary often begins with curiosity and patience, and that humans, with their unique blend of empathy and ingenuity, could achieve wonders that no other species could. Rizwan closed his eyes and whispered softly, "We are part of something greater, and this is only the beginning."